Only when tenants are telling the story that a housing policy is going to be framed in that way.
When your housing doesn't work, nothing else in your life works.
Right.
And we see that every day.
Right.
We see how this is a public health issue and a public health crisis. The housing crisis and the crisis of tenancy, as rents skyrocket and eviction rates go up and displacement goes up alongside it, is the homelessness crisis.
Yeah.
It's also the mold and respiratory disease crisis. It's also mental health crisis, childhood development, educational outcome crisis.
Yeah.
All because of the fundamentally intersectional nature of housing. When folks mobilize around their shared interest, their class interest as tenants, and go to the legislature saying, we are your constituents with just as valid a claim on your time and your interest as anybody else in your constituency.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of optimizing a profit and loss statement. It's an issue of life and death. It's an issue of, am I going to be able to put food on the table for my kids? And am I going to be able to guarantee that they don't get unnecessarily sick, seriously ill, simply because somebody doesn't want to pay to upkeep the place that we're living? That humanization, I think, has really made what we've done in the legislature, as unprecedented as it's been in terms of the momentum we've garnered over such a short time period. The folks in the legislature listen, because they're talking to human beings and they're human beings, and it really, I think, is a necessary predicate of any understanding that can then motivate a collaboration between the powers that be and those who have been all too often forgotten by the power structures that exist.
The specific piece of legislation that we're ready to campaign around when the legislative session starts again in January is such a good example of that. Eviction and the laws around it and the court process around it is something that not a lot of people are familiar with unless they've gone through it themselves, which 1 in 20 renter households have in 2024. 1 in 20 is a really high percentage of people to go through the deeply traumatizing experience of eviction. But unless you're in that category or have interacted with the court process of eviction in another way, most people have not a lot of understanding of how that works, what that looks like. And if we talk about just cause eviction purely in the register of court processes and, legal details, it can mask what we're really getting at when we're talking about it, which is everything that you just described, people's experiences of not knowing that they're going to have a place to sleep that's going to be safe and secure next month. That's what Just Cause is about, is an assurance that at minimum, if you are kind of able to keep up with the rent, which is hard enough to do, abiding by the lease, not bothering anyone, not harming anyone, you can sleep easy at night knowing that you're not going to be tossed out all of a sudden without even a justification for it, not even accusing you of doing something that then you could then try to remedy, but simply for no fault, a no-fault eviction. And that's what Just Cause is about. It's just saying, as a tenant, you don't have a lot of protections. At least you should have the assurance that you can't be kicked out without a valid reason, because we're talking about your housing. We're talking about the roof over your head, with the foundation of the entire rest of your life, where your kids go to school and your doctor's appointments are scheduled and you have a way to get to work and you have a life. You can't just be fully uprooted out of your life because there was a change of property ownership and the new investor from New York wants to double the rent.
Right.
It's not a good enough reason to kick somebody out of their home.